Ah, Fort Knox. You know, it's more than just a military base in Kentucky. For decades, it's been a symbol of America's wealth and power. It's also been like America's ultimate treasure chest, as it's where America stores its gold. But what if, just what if it was all a lie? Are you freaking serious? Really? Is this what we're doing now, y'all? I take 1 week off and I come back to some of the most ridiculous BS, from gold being revalued at $15,000 an ounce to is there really gold in Fort Knox? I tell y'all, some days I just can't handle this and I just don't have the patience for it. And guess what? Today's one of those days where I just don't have the patience for the nonsense. So let's jump straight into it. What is good, Stackers University? It's so good to have you here. I figured I'd say my hellos before I really go off on my rant. So be prepared to be offended and even unsubscribe. I want to be clear. It's time for the kids to go sit at the kids' table because the adults need to have a real conversation. Which table should you sit at? Well, if you can't take this type of hat off, it's probably best you go sit at the kids' table. Now that the tinfoil hats are off, this Fort Knox situation reminded me of something I just couldn't put my finger on at first. And for like 20 minutes, and then it hit me. This feels incredibly similar to the nonsense Geraldo Rivera pulled off in 1986. And if you're too young to remember, Geraldo Rivera, with all the subtlety of a sledgehammer, hosted a live TV special to crack open Al Capone's vault. And this man had worked the country up into this incredible lather leading up to this. I mean, the hype was enormous. The expectations were sky high. And the result? Well, the result was nothing but dirt and some broken bottles. I mean, it was trolling before trolling was even a thing. It was an absolute masterpiece of masterclass in how to overhype and sensationalize journalism. Fast forward to today, and as we say in the church, the devil doesn't have any new tricks. So almost 40 years later, we have a new but very old vault capturing our attention. And let me tell you why we will not find dirt and rubble, empty bootleg whiskey bottles, and whatever else Geraldo found. Instead, we're going to find $425 billion worth of gold. Well, first, I'm not here to push any conspiracy theories, and hopefully you know by now, I do my homework and I bring the receipts. So let's see. So many places to start. Let's start with this.
I hope nobody's moved it. I'm sure they haven't. I was the first Treasury Secretary to go there in, I think, over 50 years. There's very serious security protocols in place, obviously, to protect the gold that I can't talk about. But we went, we saw it, and if President Trump wants it to be audited, that's obviously something that can be easily done.
So that's Trump's previous Secretary of the Treasury saying that he went there during Trump's first presidency and the gold was all there. So that would mean the gold would have had to have disappeared during Biden's presidency, correct? Well, just think about that and listen to this next video.
We do an audit every year. I can tell the American people on camera right now that there was a report September 30th, 2024. All the gold is there. Any U.S. senator who wants to come and visit it can arrange a visit through our office.
Just for clarity, that was Scott Bessent, Trump's newly appointed Secretary of the Treasury. And before you start saying it's the deep state, think about it. If Trump and Elon are doing all this to uncover the scams and the frauds within the government, why would his own secretaries who just got there go against both of them and share that the gold was last audited on September 30th, 2024? And notice that he said that it's an annual audit. But wait a minute, Dr. Stacker. I heard the gold hasn't been audited since 1974. Okay, so here's the distinction, and I want to read from the news article directly. In 1974, under the direction of Mint Director Mary Brooks and Treasury Secretary William Simon, a congressional delegation and press members were invited to view the gold reserves as a part of a government transparency initiative. This move marked a rare departure from the strict no-visitor policy, followed by an official audit conducted by the U.S. General Accounting Office and the Department of the Treasury. And what did that audit consist of?
And they did a very deep bar-by-bar assay and audit, counting and measuring each bar, checking it against the bar lists, their records, taking representative samples and having them assayed by an independent lab.
This means that what I will call a deep audit was last conducted in 1974. But there is an annual, what we might call visual audit of the bars every year. And as it is described, the gold is stored in several locations, but the gold is stored in the bars and they're in a sealed drum, and the sealed drums have signatures on them and dates as to when they were sealed. And those drums are put inside a vault, inside a depository. And then the vault is sealed. And the vault door has seals with signatures and dates on it. So you can see if anyone has gone into the vault or gone into that drum to get into those bars. If you really want to know if their stuff is there, all you have to do, folks, is look at the seals. And if they're not broken, then no one's been in there. So you don't need to do a deep audit every year. That's just absurd. Let's be clear. Like, while most of us as Americans might not know this, Ron Paul, Elon Musk, and Trump all know this. Remember, it was Trump's Treasury Secretary that was the first to visit Fort Knox in 40 years. Don't forget this picture of Steve Mnuchin holding one of the gold bars during that visit. It's also not lost on me that we are on the 50-year anniversary of when Fort Knox was last audited. Come on, y'all. I really hope that they don't think that we're dumb enough to believe this. Well, of course, some of us are because they are conspiracy theories. And a whole bunch of people are starved to create YouTube content, have jumped all over this stupidity train. And apparently, they're going to ride this train to Stupidityville because they refuse to learn or even do a simple Google search or do some research before they let the stupidity fall out of their mouths. Speaking of which, of all people, Ron Paul knows better than this because in 2011, after years of complaining about the gold and not being audited, he finally got his hearing. And what happened? He was given a report that contained a list of every single bar and the assays, which used to actually be on the governor's website. So let's talk a little bit about a conspiracy theory. Because all of a sudden, you can't find those reports on the website anymore. How do I know? Well, because about a year ago or so, when I first heard about this and Jeffrey Christians did a video, I actually went and looked. And now I can't find them. At any rate, Ron Paul's attempt to save his face was that he said, only during the preparation of this hearing, that it was then that my office was informed that the men had conducted assays on a statistical representative sample of gold bars and was provided this report. Folks, it's nonsense. It's a scam. Don't get sucked up into the nonsense. I've given this topic as much attention as I can because you're either going to believe me and listen to the clips that I provided from people that are in the know, or you're going to keep believing what you want to believe no matter what. This means that we might need to take a different approach. So let's exercise that little space between our ears. I know for most of y'all, especially subscribers of Stackers University, which if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and hit the subscribe button now so that you can make sure you don't miss content like this and you have at least one channel that you can trust for good information. At any rate, let's just game theory two likely scenarios. Scenario number one, all of the gold is there. Now think about this. What if all the gold is quote unquote there? Even if Elon streamed it live, would you believe that it was really gold? I mean, how would you know if those aren't gold-plated lead or tungsten bars? Well, what if they sampled some of the bars? Well, you wouldn't know if it was a setup and they only grabbed the quote-unquote real gold bars because it's a conspiracy. So then you would want to have every bar be assayed. But how do you know that the assay results weren't even faked? I mean, do you see where I'm going with this, folks? It almost starts to feel like that story of if you give a mouse a cookie. If someone is a conspiracy theorist and they really believe what they believe, it's almost impossible to provide them with the information that they would need to change their mind. So let's just move on from there. And this is actually where I think it starts to get a little fun. Possibility two. None or only some of the gold is there. Now pause and think about this. Do you really think the government would tell us the truth? I mean, let's just really think this through. The US, with the world's biggest Ponzi scheme in the form of the US dollar and dollar hegemony, that it would only be held up behind the belief that we have 8,100 tons of gold. And you're telling me that they're going to expose that and potentially put that at risk? Let's just go a little further. I mean, just really, what if the world found out that we didn't have any gold? What do you think would happen to the dollar, our economy, the global economy? Let me see. The price of gold would skyrocket while the value of the dollar could plummet dramatically. Let's see next. A loss of confidence would absolutely collapse the US financial system. It would cause an enormous power shift. There could be a world war as a result of people scrambling for power to fill the void left by the US. And then there would be this huge economic shift in power. It would ultimately mean the end of the United States as we understand it, our quality of life, everything would change. So do you really believe that if the gold wasn't there, they would destroy everything, including themselves? I mean, that is one heck of a kamikaze mission, if you know what I mean. I mean, this would be a prepper and gold conspiracy theorist wet dream, but just remember, wet dreams aren't really real, and often they end up with you being in a mess and alone by yourself. There's just no way that I can think of that the people in charge of this Ponzi scheme are going to wreck their own Ponzi scheme when they are in charge and in power. It's just absolute insanity. It makes zero sense. Let's get the brass tacks here. Do I know if we have 8,100 tons of gold? Nope. Would I like to believe that we have 8,100 tons of gold? Yep. I don't know that proving whether or not we have the gold or not is really in our best interest. If we don't have the 8,100 tons of gold, I want everyone to shut their mouths and keep the lie going. Because if we expose our own lie, then we're all screwed and our world is going to absolutely change as US citizens. It would truly deteriorate into chaos and poverty, and mass poverty. We would become the country that receives food being dropped from planes instead of being the one that drops the foods. All in all, folks, you're just being gaslit. They know, and you should definitely know it. Trump wasn't worried about the gold in his first term, and 4 years later, all of a sudden, it's a huge issue. Come on, y'all. This just doesn't make sense. And it's just like the gold and silver stacking community to lock our jaws on any theory, conspiracy or real, that could make an argument for higher gold prices or silver prices. Folks, we don't need any of that. Gold and silver are going to continue to go up because our politicians are who they are and they spend more than we bring in, and they don't plan to change that. So your gold doesn't need a conspiracy theory. Your silver doesn't need a conspiracy theory. It's just going to take care of itself. In the comments section, do you think we should find out if we have 8,100 tons of gold? And what do you think would happen if we only had, let's say, half of the gold? Or simply put an A+ in the comments so that everyone knows that you always stack smarter and never stop learning. Okay, that ends the educational part of this video. Next, I want to share some information about an exciting company with some really interesting upside. But we need to do a few things before we start. This is not advice, and you have to do your own research because only you have to own your results. I want you to think about these as commercials and not endorsements, even when I own shares of the company. In fact, I don't even disclose whether I own shares anymore because I don't want you thinking that you can tolerate the level of risk that I can. That aside, let's talk about the future of energy, investing in energy, and specifically Mustang Energy. We all know energy is the future opportunity and crisis all in one, which means nuclear is finally the answer. I know uranium stocks aren't the high flyers they were a year ago or so, and that's true, but that's why I've actually been coming back and buying some of the big boys back, and adding to some of my soon-to-be producers, and finding diamonds in the rough like Mustang Energy. With the global electricity market expected to reach $271 billion in 2027, I know I need a piece of that market, especially as reliability and carbon-free energy take center stage, because the AI and AI data centers are energy hogs, and they're going to need every bit of energy they can get. Not to mention, people all over the world want to have electricity like we have in the United States. I don't need to remind you of all the challenges in the uranium market, but with Trump in the White House, we all know that we need to move away from the 40% of the global supply that comes from what we would call unfriendly places, especially with Canada being on track to become the world's largest uranium producer. And this is where Mustang Energy comes into play. Mustang Energy is a pure play uranium exploration company. Mustang Energy is focused on uranium discovery in Canada's Athabasca Basin, and we all know this region to be rich with uranium. In fact, Mustang Energy owns multiple projects strategically located near major uranium discoveries. And I think this is key because they have projects like Ford Lake, which is close to the major discovery that Cameco found in Millennial, and close to Denison's 2 deposits, including the Phoenix one. They also have a deposit in Cigar Lake East and Rough Rider South, which are located right next to the Cigar Lake mine, where lots of high-grade uranium has been found. There's also Yellowstone East, which is close to the Cluff Lake mine, which has produced over 62 million pounds of uranium, and that's located just south of Fusion Uranium's deposit, which was acquired by Paladin Energy for $789 million in December of 2024. There's also Spur and 914 West. What's interesting about Mustang is who they have as strategic partners this early in the game. Specifically, Axiom Exploration, DeRusse Geological Consulting, Red Cloud Securities, and Sky Harbor Resources. As you've heard me say before, potential is a French word for you ain't done anything yet. But I love the chances given their proximity to major discoveries. They're in a location known for high-grade uranium mines and how they've optimized their mining for efficiency. They are focused on exploration in the heart of the Athabasca Basin, and they're utilizing some of the latest technologies to help them discover and find the uranium. Ultimately, Mustang Energy is positioned for potential growth in the revitalized uranium market. The company's strategic project locations, its focus on exploration, and industry partners make it an attractive option. I want to say thank you to Mustang Energy, ticker MECPF, for sponsoring this video. Please go research them at mustangenergy.ca. Take care, folks.